I don't know if there has been a loudspeaker that I have been more excited to share with you all this year than the one we're talking about today. So let's just do it. Smash all of the stuff because we have to talk about the Magnat Transpuls loudspeaker. If you hail from across the pond, chances are Magnat is a brand you may be familiar with, but over here in the US, probably not. The Transpuls is a true three-way loudspeaker that features 4 Klipsch-optimized drivers, starting with a large 15-inch bass woofer mated to a dedicated 6.5-inch mid-range driver with dual 1-inch soft dome tweeters that are horn-loaded. The Magnat has a reported frequency response of 16 Hz. 235 kilohertz. Sensitivity is rated at 95 dB with impedance ranging from 4 to 8 ohms, which makes the Transpuls a relatively easy speaker to drive. All right, warning. This is a big speaker, bigger than our Klipsch Forte 4, but maybe not quite as large as the Cornwall. Like the Cornwall, the Transpuls is front ported and it has a flat back, which makes placement more flexible given the sheer girth of this speaker. Build-wise, the Magnat is not a high-end speaker. It is competent, but it has clearly been constructed with budget in mind. The cabinet isn't as inert as you might expect for a speaker of this size, despite its weight, which tips the scales at 80 pounds a piece. The finish appears almost black, but in reality, it is a very, very dark wood vinyl veneer, though I doubt many of you are going to notice. As for the grills, they're basic and hefty, but they rely on push pins rather than magnets to keep them in place. In terms of setup and amplifier pairings, these are surprisingly easy to accommodate. That is, if you have the room for a speaker of this size. While you can place the Transpuls up against your wall, I'm not sure I would blindly recommend that. I found their bass response, overall linearity, and SOUNDSTAGE improved as I pulled the speakers out from the wall. The good news is, they don't need a ton of room behind them to sound their very best. In our space, a solid 12 inches or so did the trick. Now, when it comes to power, these speakers are not picky. In fact, they sounded rather excellent with every amp we threw at them. Favorite pairings included the Cambridge Audio AXR100, I know, shocker, Audiolab M1, Audiolab 6000A Play, the Deckware Zen amp, and our vintage Pioneer 780, which has been modified by the good folks over at Just Audio. If I had to pick a forever pairing for this speaker, it would be the 780 or the Deckware. But for those of you with more modern gear, both the Cambridge and Audiolabs drove this speaker to perfection. So how does the Transpuls sound? Earmuffs, kiddos. The Transpuls are fun as shit. At first glance, it's easy to write this massive slab of hi-fi off as just another party speaker, a thud muffin aimed at stirring your bowels and ripping your eardrums from your skull as you crank everything to 11. But framing the discussion in this way would be doing this speaker a disservice. Look, we cannot discuss this speaker without addressing the 15-inch driver that sits at its core. As you might expect, the Transpuls has bass, and depending on placement, it can either have the right amount or perhaps too much. The bass isn't sloppy, but if you don't experiment with placement, it is possible for this speaker to sound a little boomy and exhibit some cabinet resonances. How do you know when you have got the bass just right? When it stops sounding slow and vague and starts to slap. And I mean really slap. For example, the drum kit and bass guitar throughout Rage's Take the Power Back had visceral impact with a shocking level of speed and detail. Bass notes don't project in a live sort of way, so the Transpuls is less Klipsch La Scala and more JBL L100 or KLH Model 5s, only with greater extension down low with equal, if not better, reflexes. In terms of low-end scale, the Transpuls goes toe-to-toe with our Forte 4s, only I think these manage to be more nuanced with respect to texture. Yeah, I said it. Mid-range. Okay, here is where the Magnat really separates itself from many vintage-inspired loudspeakers on the market today, in that it actually has some, and it's brilliant. Brilliant not only in its relative neutrality and detail, but it slots between the massive woofer and dual tweeter array so seamlessly that it makes the overall sound of this speaker far more linear than any of our Klipsch heritage loudspeakers. While the Magnat has a subtle smile-like curve to its overall response, the mid-range is by no means as scooped out as our Forte 4. It also has more articulation and detail compared to the KLH Model 5. As a result, instruments and vocals have more body, physical presence, and inflection without coming across the least bit shouty or forward. Directly compared to the Forte 4, using a variety of amps, the Transpulse simply outclasses the Klipsch, though you do give up some of that transparency to the source that you're going to get with a speaker like the Forte 4. While I am still addicted to the live-like quality that horns give me, the Magnat is a more jack-of-all-trades speaker when it comes to genres of music and amplifier pairings. It is infinitely listenable and textured with a natural, organic quality throughout its mid-range that is just unfazed at any volume. The Magnat's tweeter array is weird and something you don't really see these days. While multiple tweeters were definitely a thing back in the day, it's pretty uncommon in 2021. And don't at me, Macintosh or Tecton fans. Design and looks aside, the tweeter array is very effective, but not the most refined at the absolute extreme. When playing loud, I'm talking in excess of 95 dB. Some subtle graininess is audible up top, and elements like cymbal hits lose some of their natural metallic ring, replacing it instead with a little bit of sizzle. It's not a deal breaker by any means, as I've heard speakers costing thousands do this. Nevertheless, it's worth mentioning. Also, when really going for broke, the Magnat can take on a mildly more forward demeanor thanks to its tweeter array, but it is never shouty. If you routinely listen below, say, 85 dB or so, which is still really loud, I think you're going to find the Transpulse to have a nice balance of detail and extension with just a hint of forwardness that helps to keep the speaker engaging at all volumes without completely ditching its desire to be more neutral overall. No surprise here, scale is not a problem for these speakers, and they can sound positively huge. The Transpulse had no issues recreating the sheer scale of a live event right in our living room. And this is something we discovered when listening to Middle Kids and Austin native Darkbird, two bands we just saw live this week. Speakers like the Magnat can easily place you front row center when the mood strikes, and I have to tell you, I love that about this speaker. The SOUNDSTAGE knows no bounds with respect to its lateral scale, though depth is definitely impacted by placement. But even with the speakers a good foot or two out from the wall, I wouldn't say the SOUNDSTAGE is that deep. But when properly set up, it is possible for this honkin' speaker to orally disappear. Center imaging is also shockingly good, especially with a hint of toe-in to really lock it in place. Now, in terms of absolute separation and detail, the Magnat is good but not great. It is a broader sounding speaker, lacking the scalpel-like precision of a two-way monitor like the Sonus Faber Lumina 2s. Dynamically, these speakers are awesome. Like scale, dynamics are not an issue. That said, they cannot touch our Forte 4s or the La Scala with respect to outright agility and explosiveness. But if either of those speakers represent a perfect 10, the Magnat is a solid 9. What's more, because the Transpulse isn't shouty, crescendos build with a bit more finesse compared to some. So while it doesn't absolutely start and stop on a dime, it may let you see a little more of the oral view while launching off the line. It's obvious, I am completely and utterly in love with this giant speaker. Like our time spent with the La Scala, I found myself just enjoying the music and movies more than I did worrying about what it was the speaker was doing. While speakers of all shapes, sizes, and price points can deliver joy, few have been as consistent in doing so as the Transpulse. But it's not a perfect speaker. For once, the barrier to entry may not come down to price, but size. Its sheer size will no doubt keep it from calling many of your living rooms home. The budget nature of the Magnat also extends to the speaker's packaging, which is horrid. I would not be surprised if a few Magnats go back due to shipping damage, as the packaging is just not good enough for a speaker of this weight and size. That said, Magnat is currently being distributed in the US by the 11 Trading Company, which is backed by Klipsch, so I'm confident that if you have any issues, you're going to be taken care of. So the real question is, would I buy the Magnat over any of my Klipsch Heritage loudspeakers? In terms of price to performance, the Magnat is a no-brainer. It wins. Full stop, pack it up, get the trucks, it's the winner. As good as the Heritage speakers are, in terms of proverbial value for money, they are outrageously expensive in direct comparison to what you are able to achieve with the Transpulse. Now, that said, every single Klipsch speaker from the Heresy 4s on up is built to a much higher standard and will no doubt last a lifetime and become, dare I say, heirlooms. If you are a fan of high-efficiency horn-loaded speakers, and you know that I am, the Magnat cannot match their inherent magic. But if you're not a fan of horned anything or find Klipsch speakers too forward, but want to partake in a bit of what no doubt makes a big, old-school style speaker special, may I introduce you to the Transpuls. Would I buy the Transpuls over the KLH Model 5s? If they were finished in the same walnut finish as the Model 5s, I would without a second thought. The Model 5s are great. They are a bit more neutral, not to mention smaller. But the Transpuls are a great middle ground between what I like about the KLH and absolutely love about my Klipsch Heritage speakers. And it's the same story with the JBL L100 Classics. Wharfedale Lintons, still haven't heard those yet. I think the Transpuls is very much in the same conversation alongside speakers like the JBL, KLH, or Wharfedale, so long as you take build quality and materials out of the equation. Though, for being honest, it's not like any of these speakers are built from materials that are that esoteric. And considering that the L100s were peeling and rusting after a year, maybe they're not that far off in terms of quality. Would I buy the Transpuls over the Klipsch RP8000F? I think the Transpuls is a little better top to bottom, but the 8000F is more solidly built and will be a better fit for more living situations. But not since the 8000F have I sat in my room for longer periods of time with a dumbass grin on my face while listening to music and questioning everything I thought I knew about hi-fi. Like the 8000F, the Transpuls gives you so much of the good stuff that it makes spending more very hard to justify, let alone swallow. Could the Magnat Transpuls be the perfect old-school inspired hi-fi speaker for enthusiasts on a budget? I could easily make an argument for why I believe it is, but ultimately it doesn't matter because the only one who has to love it in the end is you. Me? I straight up love this speaker. I mean it. It is the kind of speaker I would design because it speaks to the things that drew me into the hobby and makes it fun without any of the BS. With maybe one exception, the Transpuls from Magnat may be the biggest surprise of 2021 because this is a great speaker. So that's it. That is now my review of the Magnat Transpuls loudspeaker, but now it's time to find out if Kristi even liked them.
Oh, I like them.
Yeah.
Yeah, these speakers are really impressive. It wasn't until really recently that I realized just how impressive these speakers were because you were directly A-Bing these with the Forte 4s while I was working in the other room. And that whole entire time I had no idea that the Fortes were even out. And so when I realized that, I was kind of like, damn, that's impressive. You know, so while I could hear that the music was sounding really, really great, I had no idea you were switching back and forth. Yeah.
The only real difference in going A to B on the Pioneer 780 and the the Cambridge Audio was difference in SPL because you can definitely hear that the Fortes are more efficient than the Transpuls, and so as a result, every time I would switch from A to B, the Fortes were louder at the exact same volume. But once you compensated for that, you know, it was pretty impressive. Although I'm still going to maintain that the Transpuls were nowhere near as forward or tipped up in the tweeter, and that is immediately maybe not noticeable from another room, but immediately noticeable when you're sitting in front of them.
Yeah. I mean, once I came out and actually sat in for my own personal A/B listening session, the differences did become more clear.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, you know, when you're listening to the Magnat, they definitely just hit you straight in the chest with the bass. It's a big sound. The Fortes are, I think, for me, a little quicker, but it's really hard to ignore the power of the Magnats. And especially at their price, it's just kind of mind-blowing. I do agree with you about the Fortes being more forward up top, which, you know, in contrast, I really like.
Yes.
With some recordings, they do become a little fatiguing at times.
Yeah.
And so the Magnats, I agree with you, are going to be the easier speaker to listen to over longer periods, as well as across all sorts of kinds of music.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Without a doubt.
But at least for me, you know, that upper energy does make the Fortes a little more engaging. more exciting. And spatially, especially, I think the Fortes, hands down, are better.
Yeah.
For me, the biggest takeaway is intelligibility.
Okay.
And I'm talking about dialogue. So when we're watching movies and TV shows, when we're using the magnets, I really struggled. So if you have any hearing deficiencies, the Fortes are probably going to be the better speaker for you.
Yeah.
In that respect. I found myself having to ask Andrew, what did they say? A lot with the magnets. Now, I get it. It's not always going to come down to the speaker. Sometimes the mix is just bad.
Yeah.
But it was still an issue.
Yeah, and I mean, that's just going to be inherent to any speaker. I think if you watch this channel, you no doubt have kind of discovered by now that, speakers that have that rise in the upper mid range into the tweeter of about, 2 to 4 dB, intelligibility is going to be something that they excel at. And if you are someone that needs that clarity in vocals or dialogue especially, then you're going to want to look for that. And it doesn't really matter what speaker brand we're talking about. That's something that you probably want to put on your list of must-haves. The Transpuls in direct comparison to the Forte 4s are far more neutral. And I mean it, far more neutral. And as a result, I'm going to go out and say that I don't believe intelligibility is bad or poor. I'm just going to say that because they don't rise as sharply in the high frequencies the way the Forte 4s, intelligibility isn't something that's going to reach out and grab you the way that it does with the Fortes. So is dialogue and vocals clear with the Transpuls? Yes, the same way it's clear with KLH Model 5s, JBL L100s, or any more neutral speaker. It's just not going to be immediately as arresting as a loudspeaker that is that much more forward like the Forte 4s.
And just to be clear, I really only found this to be a problem when we were watching movies or TV shows, because at that point, understanding what the actors are saying is really freaking key, right?
Yeah,
so,
it is.
So when it came to just listening to music, that wasn't an issue for me. And I have no problem with these speakers being on the more neutral side. I don't have any problem with that. It's just specifically when you're trying to understand dialogue, and that is for me a little bit harder.
Sure.
Between the two of us,
Yeah.
you rarely have issues where I definitely do. But all of that aside, these speakers are great. I am not joking. They are great. And I really want to keep them. But we're running out of room because I want to collect all the speakers I like, and it's becoming a problem. But the only thing I have to complain about is, and I'm not saying there's something wrong with the finish that they come in. I'm just not the black box is not my favorite look.
Yeah.
So if these things came in something like a blonde plywood, like something really simple.
Yeah.
Oh my God. There's no way I would send them back.
Yeah.
Because I would be in heaven, because it would satisfy my vintage.
Oh, totally.
But also still modern, more relevant to current trends.
Oh,
needs.
Like we talked about the other night. I'm half tempted to keep them just to have like a cabinet maker make a better outer box for them so I can slip the front baffle components and everything in, because even doing that, I think you would have just a class leading speaker for a fraction of the cost of what a lot of these things cost. And it's just mind blowing to me, like how utterly impressive this sub $1,000 pair of speakers is.
Yeah, they are kind of genius. I really like them without the grills on.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, what's the point in having something like this if you're not going to look at it?
Yeah.
So I'd leave the grills off. The Magnat logo is ridiculous.
It looks like a belt buckle.
I mean, you might as well have done the logo in Comic Sans at this point.
Yeah.
It's hideous.
Yeah.
I'd rip that off. Redesign the logo completely, because that's not good. Other than that, these are really really good. If I were shopping for them and I had the space, I would have a hard time passing these up. I really would.
Yeah.
And I'm still sitting here thinking, is there any way we can keep them? But we don't need another pair of speakers.
No, I'm with you. I think right now at under $1,000 a pair, I don't know if there is a speaker that I would recommend more at this moment, given what I know about these and other speakers in its class. If you have the space and are looking for a speaker that completely over delivers on like fun pound for pound and value for money, this is it. This really is it. Unless you're like, no, I just prefer the sound of a bookshelf speaker, that precision, you know, that, or I want to be able to have a sub somewhere else. And okay, that's a different discussion. But if you're like, I don't care about the make, the model, the size, or whatever, I have $1,000. What would you recommend? It's this. It really is. This thing is impressive.
But please, for all of you out there who have just bought your Forte 4s or your Model 5s,
Yeah.
put the phone down. You don't need to, this isn't a talk you off the ledge situation. You still have great speakers.
Oh, you totally bought great speakers. Even if you just bought 8,000 Fs, you're fine. You're fine. But for those of you in the market, don't have anything or are looking to make an upgrade, you now have something else to consider.
Yes.
Yes, I agree. Anything else?
Nope.
Good speakers.
I love them.
They're
freaking great.
They're freaking great. They are. All right. Well, that is now our review of the Magnat Transpuls loudspeakers. What did you guys think? Let us know down in the comments below. And my question of the day for you is this. Could this be the baby Cornwall for budget enthusiasts? I really want to know what you guys think, so let us know down below. If you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up, like, and subscribe. Ring that bell so that you're notified when all new videos come out. If you use any of the links that Kristi left for you down below, know that that is a great way that you have continued to show your support for this channel and the work that we do here, and we both thank you very much for doing that. Follow me on Instagram at recoveringaudiophile, and that is it. So remember, the only person who has to like the sound of your system is you. So happy listening, everybody. Thank you again for watching. We'll see you on the next video. Bye.